How's it going? Thanks for joining me again. We're back with another edition of our Sonnet channel. Tonight, we will be traveling to the center, or at least close to it, with the Romantic poet Hartley Coleridge, son of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. And here I have a photograph from when he was very young. He figured prominently into the poetry of Samuel Taylor Coleridge and his good friend Wordsworth, who famously wrote on childhood and gave us this romantic conception that childhood should be elevated and be understood as this imaginative center of our lives. I see in this poem Hartley understands, you could say, that he is a figure, a metaphor, and has something to say about that. Something important to say. No one wants to be objectified. And I think this poem tackles that. Without further ado, the poem is "Long time a child and still a child when years," which is the first line. Long time a child and still a child, when years had painted manhood on my cheek, was I. For yet I lived like one not born to die. A thriftless prodigal of smiles and tears. No hope I needed, and I knew no fears. But sleep, though sweet, is only sleep. And waking, I waked to sleep no more, at once o'ertaking the vanguard of my age, with all arrears of duty on my back. Nor child, nor man, nor youth, nor sage, I find my head is gray. For I have lost the race I never ran. A wrathe December blights my lagging May, and still I am child, though I be old. Time is my debtor for years untold. So you guys probably know already what I'm going to talk about before I talk about it. If you've been tuning in, you know I'm going to talk about the Volta. And there's something magical, very magical going on in this poem. As you know, the Volta is the turn, the pivot in a sonnet. I talk about the pivot to the eternal, which we have seen in sonnet after sonnet after sonnet. We have seen the octave, the first 8 lines, and then the sestet, which typically pivot and do something different, a different perspective. They can't continue what the octave have started. They need to reflect in order for the sonnet to enact its magic. Now, what we will see in this octave here, a very nice octave that we have, these first 8 lines here, we will see an octave where the first 4 lines here, long time a child, when years, tears. The first 4 lines don't end the sentence. In fact, it continues into the 5th, which is odd. Not exceptionally odd, but notable. And then it goes on and continues until we can technically complete the octave with all arrears. But the sentence isn't done, right? The sentence isn't over. The octave technically is done because arrears has rhymed with fears and tears. And, you know, we've concluded the work of the octave. But the sentence isn't done. The sentence isn't done until "of duty on my back," end stop. But that is already eating into the sestet. Well, how terribly fitting, right? For a person, for a speaker describing a protracted childhood, the adolescence of the poem slouches into and expands the time of the octave and borrows from the sestet. The sestet's late, right? Now, what's going to happen with this late sestet, guys? Well, the late sestet, we already have that caesura, that full stop right smack in the middle of that first line. Then we have more pauses, nor child, nor man, comma again, nor youth, nor sage, I find my head is gray, comma. Now, that's a lot of midline pauses, a lot of caesura. Finally, we get to this declaration, this acceptance from the speaker, for I have lost the race I never ran. And wow, does that really hit us emotionally. And then he gives us some imagery, and by the time we're done with this poem, it is just a full-on emotional, absolute finishing move here. Just absolutely crushing conclusion from Coleridge, the junior. I don't know, in my reading of the poetic tradition, I've never seen revenge quite like this from a son to a father. It's colored, of course, by, how biographers have treated these topics of Coleridge's life, of Wordsworth's life, and of Hartley Coleridge's life. We know Hartley Coleridge struggled with alcoholism. We know, despite the fact that he was spoiled and indulged and seen given this kind of, you could say, very indulgent early childhood. He didn't have it easy. And I think living in that long shadow was probably difficult. But as a metaphor for poetry itself and for the sonnet tradition, for the Western tradition, it also tells us something. It tells us of this terrible power of growing up and learning so much and experiencing so much to try to carry that on and make it your own. But it also speaks very well as a standalone product. I myself am not so young when I started writing poetry. I was a youth, and when I read this poem, I too feel this. Oh my gosh, so much of my time has already passed. What have I been doing with my life? I should have been writing more. I should have been studying more, or I should have been living more, celebrating more. Beautiful, beautiful poem. I think we'll leave it at that for tonight. A kind of one step closer towards the center here, circling around the kind of so-called greats of the tradition, and we will look at them, and we will look at them honestly and unsparingly. But we will also raise those voices that have not been celebrated to the same extent. And I don't know, you can find this poem in anthologies for sure, but I think it's a beautiful one, and maybe one you didn't learn in school. So thanks again for joining me. As always, I say please subscribe, please comment. Why do I say that? I say that because I can grow this thing and reach more people and do more good if I get more people on board. So it's kind of like a force multiplier effect. And I'm completely transparent on that. If we can grow this together, I can include you in what I want to do as well. So you've never had more power over the direction of this channel than you do now. And I really welcome you to partner with me in any way you would like in order to do things and speak to topics that are interesting to you. Thanks again for your time, and we'll see you again next week.